Fantastic. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Walter Contreras, and I am the CEO of Motiva, a cybersecurity and managed IT services company that specializes in cloud computing right here on Long Island. Today, we're going to talk about an extremely important topic that is much relevant today as entrepreneurs are looking for better alternatives on how to run their businesses and save on cost. We're going to demystify the cloud and empower you with the knowledge to make meaningful decisions. We will review which cloud is best for you, and we will go over the 5 critical reasons why today is more important than ever to look at technology as a way into the future and to grow your business further. A little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to post your questions in the chat at any time. Monica will be monitoring those questions and telling me as we go. At the end of this webinar, I want you to walk away with a clear understanding of what the cloud is, but more importantly, which cloud is right for you. I want you to know the difference between hosting a few services such as email, files, or things like that on the cloud, and what your entire infrastructure would look like on the cloud. I want you to understand what is Windows Virtual Desktop and why right now is the best time to make this move. How this affects your remote employees and how is much more secure on the cloud. And finally, we will go through together and as an ROI calculation to see if this is the right fit for you. What we're going to show you is ultimately what I want you to learn is how to take this mess from here and take it to the modern cloud. The idea behind it is some of us may not need that much office space anymore. I've been in the technology business for over 25 years. I was lucky enough to see the transition from the old IBM mainframes terminals. Some of us on this call probably remember those guys, to the introduction of local area networks that businesses started to take advantage of. And then seeing Microsoft taking over the market by introducing Windows, and more specifically, Windows servers. This transition allowed for businesses to be more productive with less employees and service more customers. I saw the transition from paper to electronic documents. Having been part of this transition helps me see what the next transition is. The world has changed, and in a way, all of our businesses have changed, and the way we do business will forever be changed. What is up to you to take advantage of those new technologies to push your business forward? I subscribe to the better belief that you either are growing or dying in your business. Many of us were thriving during COVID-19, and in my opinion, many of us were just a little bit too comfortable. And what I mean by that is that many things were put on hold. Perhaps you knew you needed to improve your IT infrastructure. Maybe you needed a new sales force. But the way we did business before is not coming back. And you must pivot and learn new technologies and make the necessary changes as a leader of your organization to continue to grow your business. That is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because I believe that the only thing that will push all of us forward is technology. And like our great President Kennedy said, conformity is the jello of freedom and the enemy of growth. Here's some interesting facts that happened during the pandemic. Employees were as productive working from home as in the office. In some cases, productivity went up because quite frankly, they didn't have much to do. So they started to work late at night. Others were answering office phones on their laptops or mobile devices. I know our team installed over 500 software phones on people's laptops, and they were answering calls as if they were in the office. So we did have that business continuity even as the pandemic went on. And I'm often asked this question, so why haven't we let them work from home before? And the main reason is fear fear that they will be home watching TV, maybe Netflix, that they will be doing work, they will not be doing work on time, that they will miss their deadlines or their phone calls, perhaps stealing your book of business. You're worried about your data, your customers' data, all of that information, that you needed to spend more money and buy them new equipment. And by the way, all of these are 100% legitimate uh, worries and concerns. And but the truth is that we as IT organizations have failed you. And what I mean by that is that your IT provider should be having better conversations with you all the time about cloud systems. Cloud computing can be the source of savings, legal compliance, and a peace of mind. I will tell you that today in 2020, if somebody walks through your door and tries to sell you a server, run. As same as you wouldn't use a beeper to do business communications right now, you shouldn't be looking into more hardware, especially now that some people are working from home and everything is going to start to change, and you may not need that office space anymore. And there is a problem with that concept, right? There is really no set budget. One of the biggest things for me is that you're still relying on hardware to run your business. Some of us are remoting in like still 1998 with those VPNs, right? If that computer, God forbid, shuts off or that server turned off or you lost power, there's not a lot you can do about it. So, and by the way, cyber criminals know this, right? I mean, over the last few months, we've seen a massive growth in attacks with COVID-19 scams, and they know that IT managers are at their maximum capacity. They're setting up people's home computers. They're barely keeping up with the things, with the times, and it's very difficult for them. We wrote an article for Newsday about this concept called shadow IT. And basically what this concept means is that we're not really in control of what our users are installing in their home computers and sometimes even in our office computers. So it's really important to understand that when people are working remotely, there are other threats to that data, to access to those systems that we need to consider. So I'm often asked the question, and how do we fix that? And the truth is, the only way to fix that is by implementing what we call a modern office, right? To modernize your office. And what does that really mean? It means that the office that you occupy right now, the physical space where you live at this moment in your office, is going to be very different going forward, whether you have to have social distancing or whether you have to maybe downsize. Maybe you don't need that big office anymore. And the employees have to have the freedom to be able to work from anywhere, utilizing any device and still being 100% secure while accessing your corporate data. So, I subscribe to this other idea that, work has changed quite a bit for a lot of us, right? I mean, we're working from home. We may be cooking lunch and then jumping back into the computer. We might be working from the backyard. So there's a lot of different ways, and we want to make sure that our employees have the ability to do this from anywhere. And truly, the only way to accomplish that is the cloud, right? You can attempt to do this with on-premise systems. It's going to always be costly, and you really are not allowing your employees to be free. But the truth is, which is the cloud that makes more sense to you, right? And so, that you're probably using some form of a cloud at this moment just by accessing your emails or your iCloud or all these other things. But what I'm talking to you about today is actually moving your entire infrastructure to the cloud. And I'm going to explain what that means, and we're going to go over a calculation, a return on investment calculation on how this helps you. So, but first, I need to demystify and tell you a little bit about this new technology. So we're going to talk about something called WVD. And this is a very important concept that I want you to understand. Okay, so WVD, it's really a Windows virtual desktop that is hosted on the cloud on Microsoft's infrastructure. They call it Microsoft Azure. It's what they call their infrastructure. And what this really means to you is that you have access to basically Microsoft's infrastructure on the cloud. But the concept that I want you to walk away with today is consumption. Only paying for what you use. Let me explain a little bit. When Thomas Edison introduced the concept of delivering power electricity as a utility using a centralized, generated, and distributed grid, more factories were able to get these new servers running longer shifts, some of them even open overnight, because it became affordable. Today, we're in a similar transformation, following a similar course. The only difference is that instead of cheap and paying for electricity, advancements in technology and internet connectivity are driving down the cost of computing power. And that's what I want you to understand today. With cloud computing, businesses can pay for compute power like a utility without having the massive cost of installing, hosting, and supporting these systems on-prem. So consumption is the key word here that I want you to walk away with, right? And the other thing for me that is really, really big is device agnostic, meaning what about if your users were not held hostage anymore to use one specific device? Or what about that the user wanted to use the computer that they're comfortable using at home, right? By us allowing them to use whatever they want and still be 100% secure on the cloud, you're making that user more productive, right? That user can log in from any one of these devices and they will always be presented with their desktop. The way they left it when they walked out of the office is the same way that looks like when they log in from anywhere. They can use a laptop, you can get them a Chromebook. The idea behind this is the promise to never buy more hardware again, right? And again, you know, it's supported on all these type of systems, Android, Apple, iPads, anything you want to use to access your cloud, you can. And Microsoft, you know, is the last one to this whole cloud thing. And in my opinion, you know, just watching Microsoft's transition, they've done it right. Okay, they have more cloud systems than Amazon and Google combined. And what that means to you is that anywhere in the world where you're located, you have access to the fastest networks and the ability to use their systems at will. So it's a really important fact to understand that this is available all the time and is redundant, and you will never have as much money to put into security and infrastructure as they do, right? And so here's a question that I often get, and the massive differences between an on-premise server and a cloud environment. The biggest ones for me are licensing and cost of operating those systems on-premise. The maintenance, the backups, you have to have licenses for the server, for the computer to access the server, and all of this is paid to Microsoft, right? And so, and then on top of that, you know, as these systems get older, you have to keep backups, right? And now you're paying not just for the server licensing and all of that, but now you're paying for backups too. And then it just keeps going up and up and up. The cost is insane. And this is just a little bit, a very confusing on purpose slide that I put on here, because I wanted to demonstrate how confusing, and by the way, confusing equals cost, right? So for you, every time your guy comes out and says, you know what, we need more licenses for this, this is what happens. You end up buying all of these licenses and you have to do it over again in the next 4 to 5 years. Because no one wants to talk to you about the ugly truth about the hardware, the never-ending hardware replacement cycle, right? No one wants to tell you this because, quite frankly, this is how they make money, right? The problem is that you end up making decisions and you end up with older systems. So for example, the lifespan of a server, I get it, right? So the typical lifespan of a server is 5 years, the most. And yes, some of us have pushed the limit on some of these servers. The reality is that at some point, your server could have died. And yes, you probably have a backup, and a good one maybe, hopefully, that you can virtualize it and kind of come back very quickly. But you're paying for that too. You're paying for that extra service, right? So it's just that never-ending cycle of the systems. And the typical lifespan of a workstation, of a user computer, is 3 years. And one will argue with me, and many people do all the time, that, hey, I can go 5 years with my computers. Great. But you know what happens when you do 5 years with your computers? This happens, right? This happens. And what this means is that your employees are sitting in front of that computer waiting for things to happen, right? Waiting for something to load because the computers are old. They're just old, right? So there's a lot of arguments that happen with these systems. And I can tell you, just by being in this industry and being part of a peer group that has 3,000 members, this is the average cost nationwide that you should pay for a computer. If you're paying less, you're probably cutting corners somewhere, right? Or not getting the best, or not warranty, and then a year later the machine breaks, and oh, by the way, you don't have warranty, you got to buy it again. So, but this is the average cost of a computer, and yes, you probably push this to more years than this, but again, you get into that productivity level, right? So, by the way, Monica, let me know if there are any questions that are coming in, just as we go through the slides. I know I like to talk a lot. Thank you. So we have trusted Microsoft for the last 30 years or more on with our on-premise software, Outlook, and all this email stuff. This is the next generation, guys. This is the next generation of the same process, but now it's hosted on the cloud. The promise that I will make as you move and navigate through this life cycle of never-ending cycle of hardware replacements is that you will never buy another piece of equipment for your office again. And yes, I'm on record saying that you'll never buy another piece of equipment. You will use what you need as a computation of the compute use. Let me explain what I mean by this, okay? So let's look at, and this is a return on investment calculation. Let's look at this particular, we're gonna call it ACME CPA. We're gonna talk about the life cycle of what people spend. And yes, you might spend more and you may spend less. I was actually quite conservative on some of these calculations. But so this is a CPA firm with 25 employees. They use all of the Office applications. They use QuickBooks. They have a data file server. They have Creative Solution software installed on another server because you can't put it in the same server. They're using SharePoint accounting software, right? And they have 2 servers for that. So the first server is what we call an Active Directory server. What that server does, it allows you to do Control, Delete, log in, and authenticate. So it's doing that security protocol that we are accustomed to when we're working in our offices. And then the second server is hosting QuickBooks files and data files. And then the third server, it's a little more beefed up because it needs to run what we call the line of business software on that system, okay? And then we have 25 workstations. You can slice this any way you want. You're spending this money, okay? So not to mention software, right? We're talking about hardware on the first line here. And then let me just highlight a little bit. So on these lines, we're talking about strictly hardware, okay? And then on the second lines, we're gonna talk about software. So to use these servers, you're required to have a license, right? So you pay for that operating system licenses. To use Office packages for 25 users, you need to buy licenses, right? I didn't put Exchange or any of that because A lot of us have moved our emails on the cloud. And if you don't, we need to talk really quickly because that's a huge security implication. But SQL, right? This company needs SQL. Everybody's familiar with the databases of SQL. You pay for antiviruses. You pay for the licenses for remote desktop if you're remoting in, right? You have internet connect. And again, some of these are real scenarios, but I was very conservative, right? You're paying for a firewall, and I based this on a 3-year cycle. Okay, you might be, again, you might be longer. You're saying in yourself right now, oh, Walter, but my servers are lasting me 7 years. Yes, they are, and actually they're costing you more than this because you're paying for backups and other things. You have an offsite backup, right? And then to manage this, you either have an inside IT manager, which is costing you 60, 70, 80,000, and again, I'm talking very low level here. And they're not coming with anything else other than their knowledge. And what I mean by that is they're not coming with any other software. They're not coming with any other stuff. You're just paying them that. So most companies, what they do, they outsource this and they do it. Sorry about that drawing. And they do it this way. Okay, and they end up spending. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I just want to make sure I didn't lose you guys. Okay, great. Monica, you can see my screen, right? I'm sorry. I think I clicked something wrong.
Yes, I can see it.
So think about that for a second, right? We have all of this cost that is costing this company all of this money. And you know, some of you guys actually have to comply with compliance from New York State, Shield Act, all this stuff, HIPAA compliance, all of that. And so there is a cost for that as well. This is the average cost. This is $259,000 over the course of 3 years. When you go to the cloud, the same thing that you're getting here, by the way, I can't say it's the same thing because you still get a lot of accessibility remotely. You're getting all these other tools that you don't have right now. You don't have to worry about ever paying for electricity for those servers or the air conditioning in that room, any of that, and you can work from anywhere, right? But you're saving on this scenario about $80,000. And I can do this for anybody, anytime, anywhere, and I can prove to you that these numbers make a ton of sense. Microsoft estimates that about 94% of people are moving to the cloud because of the security benefits. A lot of them, 61%, are moving because of cost cutting savings, right? So there's a massive opportunity here, guys, to reinvest that saved money into something else in your business. So how do I get started? You know, I will tell you, this has to be done right. Okay, moving to the cloud is probably the last move you'll make, but it has to be done right. And what I mean by that, there has to be an assessment. Okay, not everybody fits the cloud. I will tell you that right now. There are companies that are doing heavy computing that, you know, they may not fit the cloud. Maybe some pieces of their systems and IT infrastructure will fit the cloud, but maybe they're not ready, right? Maybe conceptually they're not ready. I could argue that all day long. However, you need to do an assessment. You need to understand what's in my office. Can I move it? Can I save money? How quickly can I do that, right? Especially now. And just so you all know, to everybody that's attending this webinar today, we're giving you a free cloud readiness assessment. Feel free to email me. It's just walter@motiva.net. You don't have to buy anything from us, by the way. That's not what I do. This is a no obligation cloud readiness assessment. I want you to be armed with the tools to understand if you are a candidate to move to the cloud. When this is done, we're going to evaluate your applications to see how suitable they are for a cloud environment. And if they need to change the way you do certain things, I can tell you, a lot of these services now are pushed as a service on people's computers. And the server is somewhere on the cloud, it's being backed up on the cloud, and you don't have to think about it. We're going to determine how much resources each application uses. So in the case of this CPA firm, they use a lot of QuickBooks files and things like that. So we're going to determine how we're going to host those systems on the cloud and how much money you're going to save. You're going to pay as you go for those resources. And remember, key word here, consumption model, right? Because you're not working 24/7. And yes, some people like me, we're crazy and we work a lot, but you're not working 24/7. So you don't have to pay for those times that you're not working. We're going to eliminate the need for server upgrades and allow you to use, like I said, and my promise to you is that you'll never buy another piece of equipment for the office. Your applications are going to run from any device. All you need is internet connection. This disaster that we just went through, this tragic of COVID-19, has taught us a big lesson, right? I mean, I spoke about this before Sandy, for those of you who are in New York. And, we suffered here during Sandy. And before Sandy, I was selling disaster recovery systems. And a lot of people weren't paying attention to that. But after Sandy, everything changed. Everybody wanted to make sure that they had the business continuity. So this is the next generation of that. Only pay for what you need and use, just like we talked about as a utility. So we're going to optimize and train. The big key here is to train your people right. And again, all these systems have multi-factor authentication. They have all of these very sophisticated tools for cybersecurity. I'm not going to get into it on this webinar, but I'm telling you, we do a lot of cybersecurity work. And by hosting this on the cloud, you're saving yourself a ton of money and headaches. As soon as you move to the cloud, you're compliant. And then you'll go live, right? A lot of this work is done behind the scenes. The moving, the migrations, all these things have to be done behind the scenes, so you have zero downtime. And then one weekend, you pick a day to go live on the Monday after we train everybody, and you go live. So Monica, I talked a lot, and I just wanted to take a little break and see what kind of questions we're getting. I see there's
Sure.
some questions coming in.
So far, no questions posted, just a comment from Tyler
Yeah, you know
Sloat.
what? I'm seeing a couple here. So one person said, Walter, how quickly can I move to the cloud? It really depends. I mean, I would like to learn a little bit more about your size of business, what type of applications are in-house, and kind of, just understand what it is that you do day to day. I'll reach out to you. But, typically a cloud system, so let's talk about that CPA firm. I will say that system, to prepare it, to fully train the employees, to understand how they're going to log in and work and all of that, it's going to take a few weeks. I would say even a month, just to make sure. But during that process, all we're doing is preparing the systems in the back end and migrating all this information over a little at a time. And then we pick a cutover date during the weekend where we migrate you, and on Monday morning, you log into the new system. We have been doing cloud migrations for now over 7 years, and we have learned a lot about, how those systems work and what to do, and more importantly, what not to do, right? So we're seeing the transition with that. I see a question here. So explain a little more about consumption. Okay. So I see here someone asking about, explain a little bit more about consumption. Okay, great. That's a great question, by the way. So think about this. On a day-to-day basis, you probably have your shift to work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Most of your employees do that. And probably some stay late, right? So think about it. In the case of ACME CPA, they had 25 employees. Let's just assume that only 5 of them work extra hours, or only 5 of them work on the weekends. The rest of the people work only regular 9 to 5 hours. So my question to you is always, so from, let's say from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day, what are your systems doing? Your server's still on, your computers are still on, electricity's on. So you're paying for a time that you're not using those machines. So how the Microsoft Cloud works is we're going to calculate and we're going to say, you know what, these people work from 9 to 5. And by the way, there's always room for working longer. So don't think that, oh, I'm only going to be able to work 9 to 5. No, 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 that's not how it works. But what you do is that that's where you go through that calculation process and that cloud readiness assessment, because that's where you understand fully how you work, right? Every organization, in my opinion, and I work with a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses, are very, very, very different. The way they operate, maybe the CEO and other people work very late hours. So every organization works differently. But the concept here is that you're only going to pay for what you need. That's it. Only what you use. And so CPU power, the whole refreshment of computers every so often, all of that goes away immediately. So that's a very important concept, and I truly hope I did an okay job on that. For us, moving from the typical buying systems and computers and servers to go to a concept of, simply paying and based on consumption is actually a difficult concept to understand. But my job here is to educate you as much as I can and to give you the tools to make sure that you understand this. Okay? So let me see what else. Okay, yeah, somebody's calling me out on this question about not buying equipment anymore. Good question. So what I mean by the promise is you never buy a piece of equipment for the office is the mere fact that to use these systems, you don't require to have intensive computers or these servers in the office. All you really need is a monitor and a keyboard, right? And this tiny device, we call it a terminal client, that sits behind the monitor, and we just put it behind the monitor and that's it. That's all you need. So is the concept of you not having to buy more servers, computers, and all these other things that you're constantly doing on that refresh model. I see a last question here, Monica. It says Microsoft is expensive compared to Amazon. So look, what Microsoft has done really, really well, in my opinion, is that they didn't set out to be a clone of, what Amazon had created. What they did is they said, look, we know these companies use servers and computers in their offices because we've done this for 30 years. And so we want to take that same idea and move it to the cloud. And what that means to you is that you can use their systems, their hardware, their internet, and by the way, it's super fast internet, without having to make that big investment, right? So they're very different systems. If somebody's it's pushing one or the other, I will say, this is where the due diligence comes in, where you need to truly understand what is best for your business, right? Some businesses may not fit right for the cloud. And I'm seeing a question actually from Elaine. Thank you, Elaine. It says here, is it effective for a two-person office? I actually think it's effective for anybody, right? Because think about it, like you have two people in yourself, right? A typical startup company will have to invest in, and I'm talking about pre-COVID, by the way. Pre-COVID, you had to invest on maybe one of those Regis offices to meet with your people, maybe a laptop for them to work from home, maybe a computer in the office when they come in, right? So to me, when I think about three people, I'm always thinking about mobility. And it doesn't matter to me where they're doing their work, as long as I know it's secure, as long as I know that all of that information that is for my customers' information is saved, and that I'm not going to get into trouble with regulations and stuff, right? So I actually think, Elaine, that it's just as effective for smaller organizations, startups, and all these others as it is for larger organizations. Obviously, larger organizations will have bigger savings, but I think that everybody could take advantage of. So, and I think, Monica, that was the last question. I want to thank everybody for your time today. I don't want to go over time. I respect people's time. And I said, I'm actually 6 minutes over, but I just wanted to thank you. Feel free to email me. This is my email address. Ask me any questions you want. I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want to make sure that you understand this concept, which is you're probably going to hear a lot more about it in the future, because this is the time to do this, right? This is the time to begin to look at your infrastructure and say, hey, can I save money? But more importantly, can I continue to grow my business, secure my data, and my employees be happy? Those are the things that I work the most to fix. And like I said, feel free to email me anytime. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monica, for your help.